Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Real Stuff podcast. This is our second to last episode of season 1. I simply cannot believe how many episodes of this show have been recorded so far. It feels like just yesterday we launched the show and we started, and here we are wrapping up season 1. Now, this episode is going to be our very last guest episode of the season. So I think the next episode, which will be the last one, is just going to be a solo TBD on what's coming out next week. But I'm so excited to share Emily DiDonato with you today. Emily is one of those creators who I'm sure you've heard of. If you haven't, search for her on Instagram or YouTube. Millions of followers. She is not just an influencer. She is a high fashion supermodel and has such a different experience in the creator space than most other creators. When I first met Emily, and we talk about this a little in the interview, we were following each other on social media and we decided to do a little Zoom call to meet each other. I think it was around the time when everyone was on lockdown from COVID. And we had a call because each of us was fascinated with the other person's career and how they brought in money. So Emily really wanted to start getting into the content creation influencer space and working with brands. And I wanted to start working with brands in more of a personality capacity where I was maybe just the face or showing up and being in a commercial or being in a piece of content without posting it on my Instagram as an influencer. And we shared insights from the industry with one another. It was really interesting. But at the end of the day, I was just blown away by how sweet and nice and kind this woman was. We all know when you see a pretty face on social media, you sometimes can feel like the person is just a pretty face and maybe there's not much else going on behind it, or maybe you're intimidated by them. But you have nothing to be intimidated about when it comes to Emily DiDonato because she is such an angel to her core. And I'm really excited for you to hear this interview because you will see her personality really shines through. When you talk to her, she has a point of view, she has a personality, and she really is a kind soul. Also, her content these days on social media has just been very lighthearted and funny, and I really feel like her personality is starting to emerge now. In this interview, it really is kind of one of those classic sex, money, mental health, relationship interviews where we dive into a whole breadth of things, everything from motherhood to opening up about finances and how she and her husband split parenting duties. I asked her a lot of questions about her husband being a typical finance bro because that's something she talks about a lot on social media, and I wanted to gather insight on how she really feels about that. And we get into everything from that to her experiences as a model all the way into sourdough. And we're really just having a chit chat here. I know you're going to love this episode. Emily is a guest that I have wanted on this show for so long. I'm so happy I was able to get her in here for season 1 before we officially wrap this up. And I'm also so excited to bring you guys season 2 of this show. We're still ironing out some details about when the show is going to come back, but just stay tuned on social media at The Real Stuff Pod, and we will give you all the details about when you should be tuning back in for season 2. Okay, without further ado, let's get into it with Emily DiDonato. Emily DiDonato, welcome to The Real Stuff. Finally, you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We've been trying to get you on the show for a while, but lives are busy. You're a mom of 2. You're working. You're a supermodel. There's a lot going on.
I mean, a lot has been going on over the last year, I feel like, but I'm so excited to do this and I've really enjoyed all your other episodes and I'm curious of all these questions that you have in store for me.
Yes. Well, let's just dive right in. I love starting these days with the money questions because I do think a lot of people have this voyeuristic lens when they listen to this podcast. They're curious about other people's money mindsets and what's going on in their financial lives. So can we just go back to your childhood? I would love to hear how you grew up with money and how money was talked about in your household.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in upstate New York and my dad was a New York City firefighter and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And, I have 2 siblings, so 3 children. I would say that we were fine, but I think I was aware that money was not abundant and certain things could not be done all the time whenever I wanted it. I was definitely not someone who was spoiled Christmas morning with 1 million gifts and things like that. I think I was aware that, like I said, it was not abundant and well aware of that up until I was in high school. And I do remember feeling when I started entering my teen years, being like, I don't want to feel like this as an adult. I want my circumstances to be different. Granted, my parents did a wonderful job. I mean, they had 3 kids. My mom stayed home with all 3 of us. She did not have any additional childcare. Like, she really manned that situation the old fashioned way. And my dad worked and sometimes had 2 jobs at a time to kind of support us. So that's what it kind of looked like for me. So sometimes I think people look at my situation now and they're like, oh yeah, it must be nice. And I'm like, well, I didn't really like grow up this way at all. And even the people that I'm surrounded by now, like, I look at them and I'm like, you guys are so lucky. Like, this is definitely like not how I grew up.
And being someone who got into modeling so young and started making money of your own earlier than most people do.
Yeah.
What was that like when you started modeling, and what is the actual financial situation of a young model?
Yeah. It's funny because like when I was mentioning as a teenager how I felt about money, like I was very like money driven as like a young person. Like I was like, I want money. And it's so funny. My toddler says that now. Sometimes now she's like, can I have money? And I'm like, no. But I wanted money really badly. And modeling was something that like I wanted to do it because of that. Like I wanted to be, I just wanted it to be more abundant for me in that situation. So I was working as a teenager when I was in high school at a pizzeria. And then when I got discovered as a model, I remember that my first job, I got paid, I think it was like $1,000 a day. But as a 17-year-old, that's like absurd.
Yes.
And it was like $1,000 a day. And I had to go to Ohio and I was doing e-commerce. So that's when you wear like 1,000 outfits a day and you just change. And that's like everything that you see when you shop online. And my face wasn't even in it. It was just like nose down just to show the clothes. But I remember they flew me there. I stayed in like a Park Hyatt. My mom would come with me and we were like, oh, we're like living the most luxurious life ever. Like this breakfast is buffet, like all you can eat. And like, we're staying in this like Park Hyatt. And I was like, and I'm making $1,000 a day. Like I am made for the rest of my life. When you're 17. And that was a lot of money then. And it still is a lot of money, but in comparison to where my career and finances like evolved from there because of my modeling career, like that's one of the things that I'm most grateful for in my modeling career is that it gave me a level of financial freedom at like an absurdly young age. Like I did not have to ask my parents for any sort of assistance like after I was 17.
So $1,000 a day, but you're not working 365 days a year. You're still in school. Do you have any sort of figure of at the end of some of those early years, how much salary or revenue you were able to make as a aspiring jump-starting model? I
mean, I don't want to get into the exact numbers, but what I will share is that like within the first 1 to 2 years of my modeling career, I was making over 6 figures, mm-hmm. And I was in that range and, started saving that money. And I bought my first apartment when I was like 20 years old in New York.
Bought the apartment.
Correct. Yeah.
As you're making this money, are you saving it? Are you investing it? Are you spending it? Like, what are you doing with it?
I was not investing it. I was just sitting on cash. And I did buy an apartment and I remember I bought like, I would shop here and there. Like I remember as a model and especially at that time, like they really wanted you to be like head to toe designer, like in that realm of things because people did care about that, especially at that point. It's changed a lot now. But even still, I was just sitting on cash. Like I really didn't do a lot with it. Like even when I met my husband now, only when I met him, we started like traveling and I felt like my lifestyle changed a little bit more. But when I was a teenager, like I didn't go to clubs. I like didn't party. I didn't really travel because I was young and I was like working and I was just kind of like, this is what I'm doing. I just wasn't a very like flashy is not the right word. I just don't think I knew what to do with it. I was just like, I'm saving money. And originally when I first started modeling, my hope was like, oh, I'll save money and I'll be able to like pay for my college full out. Even when I was thinking about going to college before I started modeling, like my parents were like, you're going to like a SUNY school if you can even get in or a community school. Like we're not paying for you to go to like some big fancy college. And I give them props for that because it wasn't like I was this person who was like, oh, I really want to be like a lawyer. And I'm dead set on this. Like, I think if I had like a real vision for it, they would support me, but they were like, you don't even know what you want to do. You don't know who you want to be. Like, just go to a community school, go to a SUNY school, like figure out what you want to do. So I was always kind of like, okay, well, at least if I start modeling, I'll be able to pay off my college outright wherever I go when I decide to do that. I mean, that kind of evolved later in time, like what that ended up looking like, but I obviously didn't go to school until later in life. But that was kind of the logic behind it originally.
Back to this apartment that you bought. Have you ever shared how much that first apartment cost?
No, I think that apartment cost like around $800,000.
And did you buy it all right out, or you took out a mortgage and put a down payment?
So this was like 2012. So like, bear with me here, because like I'm old now.
She's going back in the archives.
I think I might have. Yeah.
And then you didn't have any monthly payments on it.
All I had was the maintenance. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. That's pretty epic to buy an $800,000 apartment at 21.
Yeah. I mean, that, especially back in, 2008 and that timing of modeling and fashion, like it was different. And it's changed so much over the years. But like, even when I would talk to models who were like very popular in the early 2000s, like when I would share what I was making per day, they'd be like, yeah, like when I was doing that exact job, like 5 years ago, it was $500,000 a day. And you're like, oh, well, it's changed since then. It's not like that anymore. And then slowly over the years, the day rates and the money has like significantly gone down. Not even just like for me, I think just the industry itself. So it's been interesting to watch it change.
And it is fascinating how we all know sometimes lucrative careers are not necessarily the most satisfying. They're not necessarily giving you what you want to get out of them. And I will always remember one of our first conversations we had, it was such a grass is always greener conversation. Mm-hmm. I guess we discovered we were both following each other online and we wanted to do a Zoom call to meet. So we had this video chat. And I remember we had this conversation where you were telling me, I really want to start doing the stuff that you're doing with YouTube and brand deals and sponsorships. And I was saying, I want to start doing some of this stuff that you're doing where I don't have to post the content on my feeds as an influencer, but I can just show up for a day and be the face of a campaign or a commercial or something. And we sort of gave each other advice on how we can successfully break into each other's spaces a little bit more. Seems like you've really experienced a lot of success. I know you still do modeling projects, and oftentimes when brands are hiring you, they want the Emily DiDonato face. But you also do sponsored content. You're an influencer now, and you have millions of followers across your platform. So can you just talk about that transition you made into the influencer space and how it has been different in terms of finances from being a model?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's interesting and cool about being a model is, just like you said, you show up for the day, you get paid for the day. Sometimes you also get additionally paid for usage. So what's really nice, and where a lot of like cash kind of comes in, it can come in as a model, is like you can shoot a TV commercial 1 year and then they want to keep using that commercial for years and years and years. So that's what's really cool about some of the work that I did as a model, and a way that I like really was able to kind of like, build my life and that element of it. As an influencer, it's so, I wanted to be an influencer because I remember like in 2012 or so, I started watching bloggers like blow up. And I just liked the way it looked like they had so much more agency around their career and what they were doing and what they were working on. Like as a model, you're told what to do, where to go, how to look. And also they're like one-off stints too. That's the other weird thing about it, and something that I wanted to mention, because although it sounds like so awesome, you make all this money as a model, you're an independent contractor. Same as being an influencer, but you only know when your next job is. Like you actually like, and then that's it. Like you don't know if you're going to make any more money. You don't know if people are not going to be interested in you anymore. You don't know if that contract is like going to end, and then next year you could make $0. And what I would see a lot of my peers go through around me is like, you become a model, you make tons of money, your lifestyle changes significantly. Maybe you're spending more, you're doing more. And then all of a sudden the next year, you're not making any money. So, and it's weird because also, and I've talked about this on my social platforms as a model, that you can be super successful, but with age and with time, very similar to an athlete, your value decreases. How much money you make decreases. So unlike any other career, you evolve, you get better, you change, you make more money, you get a raise, you get a promotion. It's literally the opposite. So that is hard mentally, but I think it's also hard to grasp that financially when you start like making money. And then it's hard to be like, well, this isn't going to be forever, But when I started watching influencers, sorry, that was a random side tangent, but something I wanted to share. But when I was watching influencers and bloggers blow up, I was just like, that looks like a way better version of it. Like I want to just have like my own platform and post what I'm interested in and what I'm doing and be able to make money that that way. That just seems like a much better way. I think, and I was also watching influencers like infiltrate the fashion industry, and fashion was very angry about this at the time. This was when like, you know, bloggers were starting to get booked for like kind of like fashion or modeling jobs, and they'd show up on a set and people would be so mad. They would be like, ugh, she's not a model. Like, what is this person doing here? Obviously now that's like the norm. Like creators are all over with all types of brands and working with them in all capacities. But I remember being like, I just think that the way that they're doing it, I wanted to do that. And I would watch people around me. And it's funny because I have been working on building my social media. I mean, when you and I spoke that many years ago, for a really long time, and it's taken, and you know this about me because I've spoken to you about this, it's taken me a long time to actually like make money from social media, even though I had a lot of followers. And I kind of, not always had a lot of followers, but I was always working on my socials and investing in my socials. But I had a lot of followers, I think, because people knew me as a model, and I don't think they saw me as a creator. So it took me time to actually be like, no, like I really actually lean more towards being a creator now more than I am like being a model. Like I just got booked for a modeling job in Spain next week. And I'm like, wait, I have to be gone for like 3 days for this job. Whereas like I could be doing like social media stuff like in my bathroom. It's way better. It's more work though.
Something I've been loving these days is having Coco snuggled up on me in her baby carrier and then heading outside for a little walk so we can both soak in the perfectly crisp fall air. I love this time of year. I love the clothes. I love the baby snuggles. And in this postpartum period, I've been on the hunt for the coziest essentials that are comfortable enough to wear around the house, but then still make me feel more put together than I actually am when I get out of the house. So the cashmere cocoon cardigan from Jenny Kane completely checks all of these boxes. It's oversized, it's incredibly soft, and it's the perfect piece to throw on when I need to feel both comfortable and stylish. And whether I'm running errands, cuddling up on the couch, or just trying to keep warm, this cardigan is a lifesaver. Jenny Kane's pieces are all about timeless style and effortless luxury. I'm already eyeing a few more of their cozy sweaters to add to my fall wardrobe. Plus, their home collection is just as dreamy with everything from throw blankets to candles to help make your space feel like an absolute sanctuary. And as a listener of The Real Stuff, you can get 15% off your first order with code REALSTUFF15 at jennykane.com. That's 15% off at JENNIKAYNE.com. Promo code REALSTUFF15. So let getting dressed be one less thing to worry about and embrace your fall aesthetic with Jenny Kane. I remember you talking to me about getting booked for a YouTube video, a sponsored content video from a brand, and you sort of talking to me about how the idea of sitting and talking to the camera as Emily telling people what you're using or the product or whatever felt so uncomfortable to you as someone who is used to showing up on set and reading a script or just posing. Like it's such a different world.
Totally. Like it's just easier being told who to be, and you don't have to be vulnerable and you don't have to show people who you really are. But then when I started social media, obviously people see through that immediately. Like they don't want to see just like pretty images anymore. They want to know who you are, and they want to see a genuine side of you, the good and the bad. So that was like a hard thing for me to get over. But I think like I found momentum pretty early on, and at least with like YouTube. And I mentioned YouTube because that was where I really started like opening up the most. And I feel like people got a better idea of who I was, because a two-dimensional image just doesn't do it. And I realized that people like enjoyed what I had to say and what I had to share, which was like confidence boosting and gave me the momentum to kind of like keep going and keep pushing. But I'm still figuring it out. Like sometimes I'm like, what? Like it's even still now that I'm a mom and I have 2 kids and like I'm living in the suburbs, I'm like, what do I say now? Like when I was still modeling, it was like, I'm jet setting. I'm walking a runway. Now I'm going home. Now I'm in New York City. Like it's just so easy to show that. And it's like an insecurity of mine, because I'm like, well, that's interesting. That's why people like me. I'm like, people don't want to know about my sourdough starter kit. But then it turns out that like they do.
Turns out they do. And other people are doing it too and need to see how you're taking care of your baby.
And the people who want to stay will stay. And if they don't want to stay, they don't stay. But like, it is like a vulnerable thing.
Would you say that there was a point, or have you gotten to a point yet where this job on social media is outweighing what you were bringing in as a model?
Not yet, but inching closer. And it was weird because there was a time, like, you know, when I was pregnant with my kids, that I didn't really model or do much influencer work. Like I kind of wasn't working for a minute and not really making money. And I disdained this period of my life. And it made me realize about like my relationship with money a little bit more, even though my husband is successful and he brings in plenty of money to like keep us safe and secure and our house is taken care of. But for me personally, like making money is a huge confidence driver for me and something that I've been doing and doing well since such a young age. So when I had this period where I wasn't really working or making money, I found that actually contributed a lot to like some of the mental health stuff that I was going through, because it just like, I don't know if I'm just a slave to capitalism or what it is, but I just feel that I need to be like making money and being productive outside of just being home with my children.
On the note of your husband and Kyle, you guys met on an airplane. You have this amazing meet cute story that people can find on your TikTok somewhere. When you first met, he now works in private equity. He's a finance guy. What was his financial situation when you first met?
I mean, Kyle was always like, he always had a good job. Like he worked in investment banking and then he went into private equity, but he also comes from like a normal upbringing. Like his dad was a lawyer and his mom was a teacher, a little slightly different from mine, obviously. But, you know, he very much knew he wanted to go into like that industry, and especially what he's doing now. So he was always kind of like set. And it was funny because when I met him, I had never really dated someone who had like a real job. Like I was telling someone this story the other day, I like always dated male models who were like broke.
Wow, Emily dating male models is such a vision.
And I remember like I was fully like a sugar mama, but like didn't care. I was like, you can live with me and like not pay rent and like I love you, it's fine. So then when I started dating Kyle and he was actually able to like take me out to dinner and like do nice things, I was like, wait, this is like better.
So is Kyle currently the higher earner in the household?
Yes, he is, which shifted. That was not always the case.
When you were modeling.
Which I love to remind him. Because when we first started modeling, like I made more money than he did. And I mean, it was much earlier on in his career and like, and earlier on in mine, but like I did make more money, but I always loved to tell him. And like at one point he moved into my apartment that I had bought. So I always loved to jokingly remind him, I'm like, I took you in. I took very good care of you. And he's like, Emily, what the hell? But we weren't even married at that point. It didn't matter, but I made it clear.
So in my relationship, my husband used to work in finance and he was in this job multiple jobs in finance that were very demanding on him, on me, straining on our relationship. I don't think it was his passion or calling. It's just kind of, he was very good at math and numbers. And so fell into that field. Pretty quickly decided he wanted to go back to business school and reroute his career to be working in media. And I would say he's now kind of in like finance media. Like there are still elements of finance, but it's in sports media. He's a lot happier. I mean, I'm a lot happier. I notice the difference in his availability and just how it affects our relationship. I see you posting a lot of content, kind of like empathizing with the private equity wives of the world, you know, and for people who don't know what I'm talking about, there's a decent amount of funny videos on Emily's socials that are about how her husband is a finance bro and about how, you know, everyone wants a man in finance until you're going to be spending half your vacation waiting for him to get off the phone or he's on the computer while you're trying to talk to him. When you post this stuff, I can't tell if you are really unaffected by it, but it's just kind of like something funny that you're throwing out there, or if there is a little sense of you that is resentful of this lifestyle that he's created. Which is it?
That's funny. It's interesting because a part of me is totally unbothered at this point because our relationship has always been this way. Like, this isn't a new thing. Like, Kyle has always worked so much since the minute that I met him. Like, that man brings his laptop everywhere. He's on his phone, like, meaning working and taking calls, like, in the middle of the night. Like, every vacation, he's, like, setting his alarm at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, the alarm goes off and he's like, I just have to go check my email. And I'm like, perfect. Thanks so much for waking both of us up to do that. You're literally insane. But what I will say is, has that changed a little bit since we've had kids? For sure. because I do feel like with kids, sometimes I'm just like, all right, like I just need you to like step in here or help me with something. And sometimes he's just like, he's physically also like not here. Like he's in the city 4 days a week and he's commuting. And so do I have a partner who's slightly less flexible in terms of like helping out with like childcare or certain things around the house? Like absolutely. And I do think that that's something that like literally figuring out and discussing roles and responsibilities is something that we do weekly and in therapy regularly.
With each other?
With each other. Like who does what? Why do they do that thing? Why is my role this? Why is your role this? Like, I mean, it almost comes up like every day because sometimes there is tension around it. And I think sometimes people get the ick, I feel like, when I share that I do have like a slightly more traditional like roles and responsibilities layout with Kyle. Like he goes into the city every single day. He works. That is like his primary like work and concern. And mine is like home and children. I'm primary on that and like taking care of that and making sure that that's managed. What's hard is sometimes I'm like, yeah, but we made these kids together. Like your job is your job and my job is my job, but the kids we did together. So sometimes we run into each other there because I'll be like, and especially when it comes to like weekends and stuff like that, because I'm like, well, I'm also like working and doing stuff with the kids and figuring them out. Granted, I do have childcare that helps me usually, not lately, but usually I have someone who helps me. So sometimes we run into issues there. But what I will say is like, we just constantly have to communicate about it, like constantly.
Because of these more traditional roles in the relationship, do you view your situation as kind of like a stay-at-home mom who has a job, who kind of squeezes in the work when you can?
Yes and no. I'm definitely a stay-at-home mom. I'm mostly here. But I don't really see myself as like a stay-at-home mom in the sense that I have a nanny and she helps me with my children. And then I'm able to kind of do my work that I have. And I mean, usually like she hasn't been here lately, but I'm able to do the work that I have, run into the city, like make dinner, do things like on my own. So it's not like I'm here with the kids 24/7 and trying to work and trying to like fit in my personal time. Like that's not true. Like I do have, help and like and a lot of it. So and like including like I have like a really great housekeeper who comes twice a week. Like so I have support in other areas. So it's not like I'm manning all of this totally by myself. So that's where we start to like even out is like the wrong word, but how we supplement.
The whole stay-at-home mom phrase has been so muddied, I think, over time. And I actually had a conversation with another guest about this, Lex De La Rosa, who is that creator who kind of works in the trad wife space, but doesn't consider herself to be a trad wife. We had this whole conversation where we realized, isn't it so weird that we both work from home? We do pretty much the same job as each other.
Yeah.
But I have a nanny. My child's in school 5 days a week in the morning and then has a nanny in the afternoon / because we have grandparents that come multiple days a week. I basically can be unplugged from quote mom duties during the work week. And so I consider myself to be a working mom and she considers herself to be a stay-at-home mom because she's doing the same work I'm doing, but she doesn't have this village or this childcare help that she's chosen not to have. I don't think it's because she can't afford it. It's that she wants to homeschool her kids and she wants to be the one taking care of them.
So she's really jamming it all in.
She is jamming it all in. And we had this whole conversation about how we have the same job and we both are staying at home and are moms, but I wouldn't say I'm a stay-at-home mom and she wouldn't say she's a working mom.
I mean, the only reason why I wouldn't even call myself a stay-at-home mom, it's not because it's actually like, I think people might view that as like, I don't identify as a stay-at-home mom. I just think that stay-at-home moms do way, way more than what I'm currently doing.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like they're manning things way more. And like I said, I have this kind of outsourced support that's helping me. But if I did all of those things, then yes, I would say I am a stay-at-home mom and I man all those things. But like, the last couple of weeks, I'll say I have been a quote unquote stay-at-home mom. I haven't had a nanny and I've been trying to work and trying to do everything. I literally can't do it. I lost my marbles multiple times.
Just so that people know, that's not because you got rid of your nanny. It was because she was out for a week.
Yes, she was out for 6 weeks.
Oh, 6 weeks? I thought it was 1 week.
No, 6 weeks.
What?
So I have been like manning the fort and I give stay-at-home moms like all like, and it makes me think of my own mother and how she manned things. Like it is seriously like such an intense experience. And I feel like horrible saying this, but like if I could say anything to myself, like pre having children, like I don't think I'm one of those people who could become a mother without any village or extra support. Like that version of motherhood just doesn't look good on me. Like when I don't have support, I am just so exhausted. I have a hard time even enjoying my children because when I'm with them 24/7, I am not able to appreciate them because I'm so exhausted and I'm so overstimulated and I didn't have like those 30, 40 minutes to like do something for myself that day. So yeah, I feel like sometimes I'm like a hashtag bad mom, but like I don't think I would be a mom if I didn't have this extra support or be a very good one. Like having my nanny, I also have in-laws who are super supportive and always able to help my own mother when she can. I'm just like I'd be a really cranky stay-at-home mom.
Let's talk about that village. So your older daughter goes to school in the afternoons. Mm-hmm. Is that 5 days a week?
Yes.
And then your younger son is home and you have this, aside from the past 6 weeks, you have a full-time nanny who's at your house from what time to what time?
I don't really want to share her exact hours.
Okay.
Because I know that I'll be judged for that one. She's here. She covers the entire day. I will say that. It's not like a part-time situation.
And then you have in-laws and is your mom around?
Yep. My parents currently live in North Carolina. They moved, but they used to be really close. So whenever Kyle and I go away, like I'll have my nanny here and my in-laws and my mom, like, one or the other. So there's a lot of people here like manning the ship whenever Kyle and I go away. And then also my housekeeper, who I love, is also here twice a week. And if I really need her help, like the last 6 weeks, she'll help as well. And
so in the morning, Kyle working in finance, I'm guessing he has to leave for work before the kids are awake.
Correct. Yeah. Usually he's gone by like 6:30, sometimes even earlier. Like he wakes up, he like works out at home really quickly and he's gone.
And then is he back by bedtime and nighttime or is he back after they're asleep?
Depends on the day. More so, I would say not here. But sometimes he is. Sometimes like especially like later in the end of the week, he'll be home for like dinner and bedtime and he will help with that.
I'm assuming because of that, it's probably important for your sanity and your lifestyle, especially having a job, that you need another human being in the house to help you with 2 kids in the morning to get them up and out of bed. There's so much rhetoric on the internet about people talking about how these jobs should be the parents' jobs. This is why you had a kid. You signed up for this. You shouldn't have a kid if you can't do this. I mean, I even have gotten this a lot in regards to us having a night nurse when we have infants, people saying, why would you have a baby if you don't want to be the one to wake up to feed them overnight? And it's such a tricky topic because I think it's just a very triggering topic to people because of course we all love our kids and we wanted to have kids, but when you have a job that's demanding and you're not able to stay at home or you've chosen not to stay at home, and when B, you have the resources to hire the help or to have the village and the family and the people around and you're going to capitalize on it, it is very triggering for people who either don't have the same resources or for whatever reason feel an internal calling to do it themselves and then are kind of burnt out about it. And I'm sure it's been tricky for you, that reason that you don't want to share your nanny's hours because you feel like it's going to be something you're judged for tells me that I'm sure you have already gotten judgment on social media for sharing any sort of help you have.
Definitely. I mean, it's so funny because I was just having this conversation with a neighbor of mine who is having like on the biggest guilt trip because she was like, I think I want a weekend nanny. She was like, she has like 4 kids. And she's like, I need more hands on the weekends. And I feel so bad. Like, this is when I'm supposed to be on as a mom because she also works, right? Guilt. And I'm like, I just don't think that in order to be a good mom, you need to be exhausted and completely strung out. Like, I don't see men out there being all strung out over their kids. It's always like mom who needs to be just like running rampant and totally exhausted in order to like earn her badge as a good mother. And by the way, I am a better mother when I am able to have a couple of hours to myself. Like, I do need like a little bit of alone time. I like to work out every single day. Like, I like to go outside and have like a walk every single day. I like to work. Like, and then I come back to my children and I am a better mother. But by the way, that's me. Like, my mom, like, that's not her. Like, that she looks at me in my situation. And that's been like a point of like tension between her and I is like, I did this all myself. Like, I don't know why you need all of these people. So like the judgment isn't even just from like social media or whatever. It comes from like inside the house too. And I've had to describe to her, Kyle's working situation is very different from my dad's working situation, who is very around, and his hours were wildly different. So, but I feel like everything is so different for everyone.
Entering into motherhood also hits people very differently. And I think for you, there have been a few topics that you've highlighted across your socials that were areas of strain, I guess I'll say. First and foremost, you having, I think it's called DMER with breastfeeding, which, people can look up, but is basically a overwhelming feeling of sadness and nostalgia every time the baby latched and almost like postpartum depression type of vibes.
Yeah, it kind of gets bucketed as that.
And then another area that you've really talked about, and especially now being, a year out with your second, is changing body image and getting especially as a model.
Totally.
I want to hear about that transition into motherhood as a model and as someone who kind of grew up with such different rhetoric around body image than most of us did, how having a baby and seeing your body change and then trying to get it back, but then having a second baby, how has that all been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first time was much harder than the second time. But the first time, I think it was just so triggering for me because at the end of the day, no matter how you dice it and how healthy you eat and how much you work out when you're pregnant, you are going to get bigger. And my brain and my heart was like, bigger is bad. In all shapes and forms. I don't care how it's happening and why it's happening. It is bad. This is bad. Freak out. So that is how I felt when I was pregnant with my first. I think once I got to like the second or third trimester though, you are kind of like, you just have to surrender because there's just nothing that you can do about it. And, even after I had my second baby, I was the exact same weight both times the day I gave birth. And my first pregnancy, I worked out every day. I lifted weights. I did stairs. I did all of these things. My second pregnancy, I did not work out that much. I didn't eat that well. And I was the exact same. And I say that because your body's going to do exactly what it needs to do and it wants to do to get to the point of like when you are ready to deliver. But it was super stressful the first time. And I think I was fully a victim, and I still am, of bounce back culture. My bounce back culture and how I feel about that is not because I want other people to think I look good. I have such a deep need to feel good in my body. When I had after I had Teddy and Oliver, I think both pregnancies I gained somewhere between like 30 and 40 pounds. And after I gave birth, I wasn't one of those people who came home from the hospital and they're like, I lost 20 pounds. I was like, nope, I lost 9 pounds, 9 ounces, the exact weight of my son, nothing else. I was so mad. And then I always gain weight when I'm nursing. And so I would always be so mad because I'd be like, people would be like, oh my God, I'm already like feeling great. And I'm like, not me. I feel big. I feel lethargic. This isn't the body I feel comfortable in. This isn't a body I even know how to get dressed. So I wish and when I talk about this, I think I never want to propel this like toxic bounce back culture, but I also cannot pretend that I am one of these people who's like, I love every inch of my body and I love myself and I own this. I'm not. I'm deeply uncomfortable in this version of myself when I am postpartum. Every aspect of it, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I think I am like a highly sensitive person. So it could be worse for me. I know it is worse for me maybe than others because I have people around me who are like, not that bad, not that big of a deal to me. It is a big deal to me. And I take it like very much to heart and I find it really hard. So I only say that because I think there's like this push that you must love, love, love your body. You must like just love it. I think you should respect it and I think you should honor it and I think you should let it heal, especially after you had a baby. There's no part of me, like I feel like in terms of like respecting the hell out of my physical form in terms of what it did and created, I feel that and own that and feel good about it. But in terms of how it looks, like I'm not healed in that department, if that makes sense. And I'm not afraid to like say that. And I'm also not afraid to say that when I fit into like my pre-pregnancy jeans again, I am very happy. And that makes me happy to be able to wear those things, to feel confident again. And it like trickles down into the rest of my life. Maybe that makes me sick in the head, but like that is where I'm at. And I think forcing women to be like, you have to love this whole new version of yourself. Like it's going to take you time to get used to this new version of yourself. And it's going to take you time to feel good again, probably. And like, that's okay too.
I have seen, as you've posted some of the content about I guess, getting back to a body that you feel happy in. I won't even call it bouncing back, but just, losing weight and going to the gym and getting strong and healthy. I've seen some of the commentary, I would say most of the commentary is people feeling similar and being grateful. But I have seen some of the commentary of people thinking that the content is fitting into the category of like diet culture and promoting negative body image. And, especially in today's anti-diet culture and body positivity movement space, I'm sure you've received feedback from people that is telling you that what you're doing is toxic or harmful or whatever. Are you really able to look past all that and say, listen, I know what feels good for me, or does that affect you?
No, that doesn't really affect me because like my take on that is like when people are like, you're contributing to diet culture or this is toxic, I always like to say that I'm sharing my authentic journey. And if you look at my socials, I post what I'm eating. And by the way, like very healthy, clean, homemade meals and how I'm working out every single day. On the flip of this, I could very easily lose 40 pounds and I could use Ozempic, or I could do something like that and you would never know how I did it. And I could just say, I don't know. I just lost the weight, which by the way, you see that too. People are like, I just keep losing weight. I don't know why. Like it just happened, which that like kills me when I see people do that because I'm like, are you kidding? Like, so no work went into this. Whereas I sometimes like own the fact that like in order for me to lose 40 pounds and feel good in my body again, it actually took a lot of work. It took a lot of effort. And I tried. Like I am one of those people who have to like track macros and I work out every single day and I'm really mindful about what I'm eating. By the way, I am well enough aware of myself and my body and my own mental health that when I start towing the line of something that is unhealthy, which I do not at this point at all, like the weight that I'm always trying to get back to is like 150, 155 pounds, which is like a totally normal weight for someone who's 5'10". I'm always like, if I was trying to be like 120 pounds, like I would be like, that is concerning, but I'm just trying to get back into my jeans. Like I'm always like, I'm just trying to get back into my jeans. But I just prefer to own the work that goes into it and what that looked like and be honest about it versus just being like, I'm just like, it's genetics. Because some people it is, but for me, it's not. And for most people, I think it is not.
Do you identify at all with, in the past, specifically in your early modeling days, having gone through disordered eating in any way?
Oh, definitely. And I know exactly what that looks like. And I do not have like any of that now, meaning I went through periods of times where I was eating under 1,000 calories. I mean, I have probably done every version of like weird disordered eating and over exercising. But now, like I work out for like maybe 30 minutes to an hour a day and eat like 4 great meals a day. But like when I was much younger, and especially when I first started modeling, because people are always like, you are too big, you are too big. So I would try everything under the sun and every cleanse and every type of way to get smaller, 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 which by the way, like sure, that can work for a period of time, never sustainable, ever.
So knowing that you've spoken a lot about body image and that your actual body has been a point of conversation, whether it was in your modeling days or now postpartum or whatever, something I'm always so curious about with supermodels who are literally the face of Maybelline or Acqua di Gio or Victoria's Secret. Have you ever experienced a lack of confidence about the prettiness of your face? Or do you genuinely just know that you are a beautiful human?
Do I feel insecure about certain elements? Like when I look in the mirror, like do I feel insecure about my face ever? Are there elements that I don't like? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like I just really want to know if models look at themselves and think, wow, I'm really a pretty person. Or if they're like, oh, so-and-so is so much prettier than me.
I definitely don't think like that. I never like go like, she's so much prettier than me. That's just not my brand of anxiety.
Wait, by the way, I want to jut in and say, knowing you as a person and knowing you and being your friend, your looks are one of the least interesting things about you. And I don't want this conversation to be like, looks are everything. But we have a supermodel on the show, and I need to know if you know that you are pretty or if you feel the same sense of judgment. Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. I definitely don't go like, oh my God, she's so much prettier than me. That makes me feel bad. I do look in the mirror sometimes and go, I don't like XYZ about my face, especially with age. Aging has been, I think it's hard for all women, but watching watching myself age and knowing what I looked like, 10, 12, 15 years ago, especially as a model. And I have photographic evidence of that, like documenting every second of the way. Like that, I don't love that. Like sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, my teeth definitely didn't look like that like 6 years ago, or like my neck looks different, or my skin looks different. But that is like aging in general. But I don't look in the mirror and go like, I'm so pretty. I think I'm like anyone where like I have days where I'm like, this is a good day. Like my hair looks good. My makeup looks good. My outfit is cute. Like this is good. Or I look, or I'm like anyone where like, I'm like, that's a good photo and I'll use that. But there's also a million really, really bad ones. So I think I'm like normal in that sense, but I don't walk around going like, I'm just like stunning gorgeous.
I guess when you see yourself in the mirror every day, it starts to like be your normal reflection.
Yes.
Onto a little bit of a sadder topic, because we could talk about your beauty forever, but you did recently just experience a miscarriage as you were trying for a third baby. And you talked about it a little bit. I think you went to your 8-week visit and there was no heartbeat. I'm so sorry, first of all, that you went through that.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit more about you know, the planning for that third baby and the timing, and then exactly what happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think, my first two kids are only like 17 months apart. And my husband and I are a little bit more like, we wanted to have all three of our kids close together. And even though pregnancy and postpartum is really tough on me mentally and emotionally, like we were like, all right, let's do this. I felt pretty good in my body. We were in a stable place. Let's do it. So I went into it, and, I am very lucky and very fortunate that it's easy for me to conceive my children. And this was the first try, and we succeeded, and I used natural cycles, and I, got pregnant. And I also wasn't really surprised by that I was pregnant, because that was the case with my first two children as well. And I mentioned that because I think it added to my cockiness of this third baby, of just being like, yep, okay, I'm pregnant. And I think I was 9 weeks when I went into this appointment, but, I had very normal, regular, healthy pregnancies. And I went in there, and I mentioned this in my TikTok, my doctor was talking to me. I wasn't even paying attention to her. I was getting my phone out to take a picture of the sonogram. And then she was talking, and I'm like, wait, what did you say? And she was like, I'm not really seeing what I want to see here. And I was like, but I'm pregnant, right? And she was like, well, you were, but I think it stopped growing. I'm not sure. And that's what's also weird about when you're in that appointment and it's very early on, they're not totally sure. They see something, but they're like, I don't know, she's like, you should go to another scan. And then of course I called Kyle immediately, and he came and he met me, and I go to another scan, and they're just like, yeah, this is similar to what your doctor also saw. The baby stopped growing. We should see a heartbeat at this point. We don't.
Was this your first scan, by the way? Because I'm assuming
this is my first scan. Yeah. And I think I just leaving her office, I was sobbing, obviously, but also my ears were ringing. It was one of those moments where you're just time just stops, and you're the whole world is still spinning around you, but you are frozen in time and in that emotion. And I was just totally devastated, because your brain just goes to what went wrong? What did I do wrong? Was there life here? And why did that one kind of have to no longer live on? You just want answers, and you feel disappointed in your body. And then you panic, and you're like, can I not do this again? Will I never be able to have a baby again? And then, by the way, you have to go a couple of days knowing that this unalive thing is inside of you. And you're just walking around yeah, my hormones are still messed up. And I have this, this embryo, whatever you want to call it, in here that isn't alive. I have to wait to kind of get it removed. And I got a D&C to do that, which is a traumatic experience in itself. I've never had surgery. So that was
what is that procedure like?
I mean, you go in, it's a very quick procedure, but it's, you go in and they put you under, and they use suction to remove everything that was there. And I have I was under, of course, and I have such a wonderful doctor, Dr. Brownstein in New York, who I adore and has amazing bedside manner. But it's just not and then you leave and you're like, okay, so I'm not pregnant anymore. And even when I found out that I miscarried, I was so this morning I was literally about to get, the nursery ready. I started thinking about that, thinking of the plans. You're always plotting and planning when you're pregnant, and what is that going to look like? Who's going to be here to support us? What will I be doing? All of that, ready to get my maternity stuff out of the boxes just to be ready. And then you walk out of an appointment and you're actually, never mind. It's just it's the rug truly gets pulled out from underneath you. And it's such a confusing feeling. And same when I left my D&C, I was just okay, so that's it. not pregnant anymore.
Mm.
And also the 2 weeks or 3 weeks after that, I was like a complete and total mess. I think just from like the hormone fluctuations and really just mourning this plan and dream that I had. And I felt so guilty even feeling that way. Cause like, you're like, well, you have two healthy children, like go focus on them, go love them, go squeeze them. But you can't help but think of the like what ifs and like what could have been and should have been and what I had planned and hoped for and like wondered if it was a boy or a girl and like all of those things. So like it was a really like shocking and earth-shattering experience. And I actually feel guilt. Like I've had people around me who have struggled with fertility and had miscarriages, and I genuinely didn't know how to support them. Similar to like when I had people who had kids before me and I'd be like, congrats, like amazing. And then once you have your own baby, you're like, oh shit, I like did not know how to support you. And I had no idea what to say. I feel that way about having a miscarriage. Like after I had it, I was like, I had no idea the pain that the people around me were going through and what this truly felt like. And like now it's like unfortunate that I'm in that club, but it is like a deep, like earth shattering, like sorrow that is so hard to explain and so confusing.
And it just shows that even as someone that has two healthy kids already, it doesn't make the experience easier.
I don't think it makes it easier. I mean, my heart goes out to anyone who struggles, who like I've had people around me who are like, yeah, I've had like 7 miscarriages. Like that is significantly harder, significantly worse. And they're not able to like, so far, some people like have their own live baby. And like, that is like insanely harder than what I went through. But I think still the experience, like I was very surprised at how upset I was. I was not that I thought that I would just be like, whatever. But I was like, oh, wow, like this is very much impacting me in all areas.
And I heard you mention in that TikTok that now, or at least when you recorded it, that you're kind of in this limbo world of, do I even want to try for that again? Was that a sign that I should just stop it too? You know, where are you mentally on that now?
Yeah. I mean, I've always dreamed of 3 children. And there was a part of me that was like, is this the universe's sign that like, I should stop here? What if this is the universe saying like, you're overwhelmed already, babe? Like just like 2 is good for you. I was surprised because I was really on the track of like, I want a 3rd baby ASAP. Like I was like, I'm ready and I'm doing this. And it actually made me take a huge step back. I was like, and I've even talked to you about this. Like I was like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it again. Like I'm getting back on the horse. Like I'm getting out there. Whereas you and Cameron, I feel like we're like more like spaced out. And I was like, yeah, I feel Kyle and I were like, we're going to like take a moment to just like be with our 2 kids, give me a little more time to recover from that experience and then see what happens and like revisit even the decision in the spring.
Speaking of mental health, moving to the suburbs and kind of uprooting your whole New York City lifestyle and now entering into motherhood and just living this totally different life. I know one of the things that you have struggled with over time is kind of figuring out A, who you are now, and B, who you are on social media specifically in this new role. Mm-hmm. And you even said it on this interview earlier. Do people want to see this? Is this interesting? You know, I'm a suburban mom now. Like, I'm not jet setting. How does watching people on social media who are in different stages of life or doing different things, how does that affect you mentally? And do you feel like you're getting closer and closer to really being accepting of the stage of life you're at and where you live? I have noticed that you are more accepting of the suburbs and you're now very, you know, pro-suburban lifestyle.
I am pro-suburban lifestyle, but I miss the city so much. I was just there on Friday for work and I had like such a stacked day and I was on cloud 9. I was so happy. I was so inspired. And I don't know if you feel this way too, but I feel so inspired by the city and being there and other people's energy. Like it really makes me excited. I love the way people dress. Like I am genuinely like so inspired by the city, which I know is cliche, but I am. And in the suburbs, it's a little sleepier. It's a little quieter. And I do find that like in the beginning, that was a really hard adjustment for me. I missed the action. I missed very easily being able to see friends, or I actually like, and it sounds so cheesy, I miss like the access to glitz and glamour. Like that's one thing about New York. Like you can go to like a 5-star restaurant or like a show or do something just like so exciting and glamorous in seconds. I can't do that anymore. Not only because I'm in the suburbs, because I also have 2 kids. So that's just like mourning that part of my life. And even when I am in the city, I'm like, yeah, I love being here by myself. I'm like, I can't picture being here with my kids too and my husband. I'm like, but if it's just me, I'd love to just be there, like within a pied a terre and like hanging out. What was your question, Lucie? Where was I going with this?
I think where I was going with that question was A, if you feel really fully settled and accepting of your new life in the suburbs, and B, kind of more of a holistic social media picture, how you feel when you look at social media and you see other people doing other things. Do you experience FOMO or a sense of, I don't know?
I felt that way a little bit when I was like younger in my life, but I actually don't suffer from that type of social media comparison. I guess not in terms of lifestyles and like, meaning I don't look at people who are still in the city and go like, oh, I should be doing that. I get that type of FOMO when it comes to work though, a little bit sometimes. Like I'm like, I should be doing stuff like that. I should be like doing work like that. I should be pursuing things like that. But I find it more inspiring than anything.
More so, you mean watching other people's content and feeling like, that was a good idea. I wish I did that, or I should do something like that.
Yeah. Or like sometimes I see people doing certain partnerships and I literally am like, I could do that. I should do that. Like if I just like mention what kind of like shampoo and conditioner I'm using lately, like I could do more brand stuff like that, but I just don't. So like get on it. Like I'm always like, the only difference between me and them is that they're doing it and I'm not. So go do it.
I agree that sometimes that content, while some people might view it as triggering or negative or making them feel comparative, oftentimes that is the driver for another creator.
Yeah. We've talked about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, I've sometimes seen creators doing partnerships with brands that immediately I will DM the brand and say, I didn't realize you had social media budget. I would love to do a partnership too. I eat your sticks all the time.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I'm obsessed with your product too. Like I would love to work with you. And I've gotten work that way.
Yeah, totally.
On this note, well, it's not really on this note, but how's your sourdough?
It was so funny, Lucie, talking about being in the city versus being out here. I was in this group of like very cool TikTokers at an event, like TikTokers and like public figures, like these are like fancy people. And like everyone's like talking about their lives and stuff. And I was like, yeah, you know, like I'm in the suburbs and I'm like getting used to it. Like I have a sourdough starter, and I just saw all the eyes just like glaze over. And I was like, oh, well, hold on. It's a lot of work. I was like, you need to be more appreciative of what it takes to make bread. But I was like, oh, I've lost the plot for sure. I've lost my city people. But my sourdough, I was just checking my Instagram, like as you were having your tech issue, because I posted a picture of it this morning and I was like, is it okay? And everyone's saying it's okay. So I'm very happy about that.
I'm in the activation stage right now. And I'm just so confused how I'm going to have enough sourdough starter to make a full loaf of bread. These people are out there online making 6 donuts a day. Do they just have pounds of starter?
You don't need as much as you think. I remember I was like, oh, I only need like, because then you add more flour and more water and then it like becomes bigger. But in terms of the starter, you don't need as much as you think. So I was surprised by that. But it's like, it's a true science experiment. My brother-in-law is very into this. So one day he came over and like literally coached me through an entire loaf. Thank God. You just have to not discard as much, or you double the recipe. When you're feeding it, you double it or even triple it if you want. And then you have an absurd amount of sourdough.
Speaking of feeding, I think I started this sourdough at the worst time. I started it when I'm about to have a baby, and having a sourdough starter, as you know, is like having a baby. You have to feed it and burp it. So when I told Michael that I was doing it, he was like, no.
No.
This is not my baby.
Yeah, you're on your own. Yeah, Kyle is in a similar boat, but then I bake a loaf of bread and he's very happy. So
I have a kid that I'm, a joint co-parent to, and then I'm a single parent to this sourdough.
What's nice about your sourdough though is like if you feed it, it's healthy and it's happy. Like there's not a lot of in between.
That's true.
Not going to be crying.
You have to take care of it.
You just have to take care of it. You can do it.
Well, Emily, this discussion was amazing. I will always remember meeting you and just being totally pleasantly surprised by how down to earth and real and nice and sweet you are, given the fact that you are this world famous supermodel who people recognize from their childhood and from TV commercials. So it just goes to show there are nice people in the world. who are also very successful and doing amazing things. And I'm so grateful that we've remained friends and that our kids have gotten together and had play dates. And we're so lucky. And thank you so much for giving us the time on the show.
I'm so happy to. And I'm so happy I came on the podcast and I'm included. So thank you so much. I can't wait to see it all come together. And I loved this conversation. I hit a lot of things I haven't really spoken about.
Thank you so much for tuning in to The Real Stuff. I'm Lucie Fink. Don't forget to follow the show on social media at The Real Stuff Pod. And if you're liking these episodes, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a written review. It helps the show so much. And if you're feeling called to come on the show, visit luciefink.com/apply and tell us your story. We'll see you next week for another intimate conversation on The Real Stuff.